This is Do It for a Living, your source for inside information on the future of automotive performance.
Getting to go do some of the stuff we're doing, cutting edge stuff, brand new cars before anybody else. I built that. I designed that. My crew put that together, and, that's satisfying.
What's holding you back from starting or growing your business into what it can be? Well, if you're listening to this, it's not a lack of information. What you're about to hear is all you need to get motivated and start making waves. Do It for a Living podcast details the journey of today's true players in their own words. Find out how they broke out so you can too. The time is now. The time is always now.
Welcome back. Today we've got Terry Fair in the awesome studios for Do It for a Living here live. Well, not really live, but in person, I should say. So Terry is also local to us here. He owns a company called Vorshlag Motorsports. They primarily specialize in camber plate suspension parts. They do a lot of custom fabrication stuff. It's a really, really cool, very clean, well-organized shop. And Terry is here to kind of tell us how he's done everything and how he's grown through the years. He's actually purchased machines and a lot of that stuff that we haven't really gotten a good background on how hard it actually is to do. So
It's very hard.
So Terry, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Kevin.
Cool. So first I want to thank you for coming over here and doing this, even though we spent the first 3 hours of the morning just talking about other stuff.
It's good to vent. It's all good.
So Terry, why don't you go ahead and tell us how you got started? What got you into motorsports, and tell us about yourself and what got you going.
All right. Yeah. I've listened to your interviews before, and it's a tough question to answer in a concise time period. I grew up right here in Dallas, in Plano area. And as a kid, I was always fascinated with anything with wheels. At age 14, I was working after school and had saved up some money, and a family friend had a kind of mom and pop car business. Did repair work, did paint and body, and somehow I got hooked up with this guy at 14, and I bought a car out of a junkyard. He helped me fix it up, and I learned how to do paint and body work. I learned how to do some mechanical work, and I had a car. The day I turned 15, I had my own car, and I got a license. And I was the only kid in ninth grade that could drive.
Were you living around here?
I was living in Plano, Texas.
Okay.
So I grew up in Plano, the suburb of Dallas, and, kind of hooked up with all the car guys in school. None of my family members were mechanically inclined in any way. I had no interest in cars, so I didn't have a father figure or somebody like that going, let's go do cars together. I just kind of picked it up on my own. This was pre-internet, so there wasn't a lot of, other than reading like Hot Rod magazine and some of those things back in the day, there wasn't a lot of outside influences to get me into cars. I'd never been to a race, had never done motorsport stuff. But at 15, all the other car guys kind of, he's got a car. And we kind of, through high school, I started wrenching and working on cars. I had 6 or 7 cars through high school and worked other jobs. Didn't really work in automotive, but I did it on all my spare time. We tore cars apart and put them back together. And my senior year in high school, I had finished all the classes I needed except one. So I took a 4-hour auto mechanics lab at Plano Senior High, and I learned a ton of stuff there. It was really fun. It was a vocational kind of class, and it took up half the day. The year before, I did a 4-hour electronics lab kind of thing. So I had kind of a fascination with electronics, a fascination with cars, and went to school and turned some wrenches in college a bit with some friends there.
What were you going to college for?
So I went for a mechanical engineering degree, Texas A&M University, College Station, Texas. And the only reason I went to school there was in my junior year of high school. One of my car buddies from high school, his older brother was a few years ahead of us. He was a sophomore or junior at Texas A&M. He said, "You guys got to come through College Station and check out the Texas A&M Sports Car Club." And they were having an autocross. I didn't know what it was. And they were driving around a parking lot. And we stopped by, and my buddy and I were on the way back from spring break in his 72 Nova or something. We did a bunch of drag racing in high school and muscle cars mostly. And his older brother had a second-gen Camaro, and we stopped by this autocross. And there's like 30, 40 people driving like a bat out of hell in this parking lot. And I said, this looks dumb. And then I rode through with a handful of people that happened to be really fast. And it changed me. It was like, oh my God, I found, the first form of real motorsports outside of drag racing. And it was fascinating. And I rode through with some people that have become lifelong friends now and taught me everything I know about driving. Eric Koenig and Michael Sinroy, a couple guys that I've ended up working with in the automotive industry decades later. And I just happened to ride through these guys, and it hooked me. And I didn't apply to any other school. I was going to go to UT or Tech, or didn't care, get an engineering degree. Went to A&M and got hooked up with the sports car club down there immediately from day one, and totally changed my life. It changed me from being in mechanical engineering. Like half the sports car club was an engineering, technology, mechanical specialty there. And so I kind of switched degrees because it was a lot more hands-on. We had like a machining class. We learned to do CNC machining.
And that was at college?
I was at college.
Okay.
We had a welding class. I learned how to TIG weld and stick weld and MIG weld. And to help me as an engineer understand how that worked, it really helped to have some hands-on. And so the MET program there was kind of unique in the country. It was one of the first that was EIT certified. And there's a doctor's program now.
Okay, so it is an engineering degree, but it's more of a technical.
Yeah, we take the same math. The labs are different.
Okay,
it's
more hands-on,
much more hands-on. And at the time, the ME department there, we didn't have an SAE program when I started in school. It was kind of defunct. And then right as I graduated,
that was before they invented cars, right?
Well, yeah, it was a while ago. But no, the SAE program there is really strong now, and they've done really well in several events. And it's a shame I didn't get to do that. But I went into engineering because I knew from a brief stint as a tire buster in high school that is a hard job. 110-degree heat and you're busting tires, that's a tough job. And I knew I didn't want to be a mechanic per se, but I was just fascinated with the automobile stuff. I got into engineering, worked in the oil field industry out of college, but had this passion for motorsports that I got from the A&M Sports Car Club. And I knew I had to do something in motorsports eventually, but I wanted to make a little bit of money first.
And the A&M Sports Car Club is still around, and they still do autocrosses all the time, don't they?
It is, and it kind of wanes and flows. At the time when I was there, we had 150 members. It was the biggest collegiate sports car club in the nation. We had the best autocross site in the country. They still do. Massive old Air Force base where they had just multi-mile runways, and we set up like road courses. It was great, and it extended my college career by a little bit. I did a 6.5-year plan because I worked my way full time through school. And I was in the sports car club as a president or vice president or autocross chairman. So it took up a lot of time. But I don't regret it at all. I had so much fun. I learned a lot. I worked out at Texas Speedway for several big automotive tests and did driving stuff and did HPDEs back in the late 80s, which was unheard of. No one was doing them but Porsche Club back then. So that kind of got me hooked into road course events because Texas A&M is right there next to Texas Speedway. So I had the best autocross site in the nation. We had one of the coolest road course, high banked ovals in the nation.
Before it turned into like a nuclear wasteland now.
Yeah. I could talk for days about TWS. It's a mess, but I really, hope that track can live on because that's where I got my introduction to road race stuff and did time trials. Back in 1990, I did my first time trial long before NASA existed, before Global Time Attack or we've been thought up. We had an event we called Aggie Cross we do every year, and we had a time trial. We didn't know what it was called, but that's what we did. So got hooked on road course driving and autocross stuff and learned a lot about suspensions and automotive stuff in school that we applied directly when we had a little bit of side business. I did some
courses specifically for that, or was that just kind of like by chance?
No, they really weren't. At then, A&M doesn't really have an automotive, or didn't back then have an automotive program like some other schools. Okay. But we learned how to fabricate. We learned how to machine. We learned how to, how gearboxes worked, and learned a lot about even internal combustion engines, but not really because it was an automotive class. Mm-hmm. But I was doing some wrenching on the side there in college, and moved to Houston after school. And me and my wife moved down there, worked in oil field, made good money when oil field was strong, and then a bunch of mergers happened. ExxonMobil and BP and everybody and their brother merged, and 50,000 oil field engineers were out of work overnight. So I kind of got left out in the cold there, and I worked as a mechanic while I was looking for an engineering job. I ended up working there for over a year at a little shop called Houston Performance. And it was a Mustang shop. We did Mustang and Camaro and Corvette tuning and dyno tuning, bolting out parts, building roll cages.
So is that where some of your Mustang love comes from?
It is. A good friend of mine, Mike Sinroy, worked there too, and now he works for NASA and some other stuff. So he kind of got me a job there, and I probably wasn't a very good mechanic, but I enjoyed it and got to work on a lot of cars. I got to do some tuning in the late 90s, with a wideband O2 sensor and a dyno, in-ground dyno that was just kind of unheard of back then. So it was kind of neat being on the cutting edge of that, and making big horsepower, 500-600 horsepower street cars that were sometimes all motor. That just wasn't being done back then. Now that's pretty commonplace,
Right.
but in the 90s it was pretty cool. So that kind of got me to where like I really want to work in this industry, but I don't want to be the guy necessarily turning the wrenches. And I learned a lot from that. Moved to Dallas, got some more engineering jobs, worked in other fields, and then in 2005, me and a college buddy decided we need to make a business. And I tried a couple of things that didn't work. He had to. And we came up with Vorschlag, which was a website I had kind of chronicling my online. I had a website starting in 96 where I would take pictures and post, weighed things. And I was always fascinated with, weights. And
So where did Vorschlag come from?
it's just a gibberish name. It doesn't really mean anything. Vorschlag spelled differently in German means like a proposition, answer to a question. I didn't really think about that. It was a short URL, honestly. Okay. I got in like 2000 and didn't really think about it. And we just had a bunch of cars we were working on the side. I had, jobs that I would do. And at the time I had started an LS swap and a BMW, which was sacrilege. And everyone thought that was crazy back in 01. And I was kind of showing step by step how I was coming up with ideas and fabricating bits and pieces and started that. And Vorschlag kind of got known for the V8 swaps.
Was that the rainbow one?
No, this was before that. This was an E36, a 3 Series BMW that I bought specifically to put an LS motor in. This was right after the LS1 really came out in 97. So this is like 2000, 2001 when I started working on this car. And nobody was really doing a lot of LS swaps then. They were too new. They were too expensive. They were coming in Corvettes and stuff. So got a motor, stuck it in a car, and I had a job where I'd be away for 3 months at a time, and I'd come back for a month waiting for the next job. So I'd have like 3 or 4 weeks uninterrupted. I could get a lot of work done. And it kind of spawned from that. And this my former business partner said, hey, let's start we were both autocrossing and doing time trial events quite a bit back then. He said, let's start a business and do setup work and suspension work on cars and kind of focus on suspension, which it seemed to be kind of overlooked in the motorsports industry. And in 06, after starting Vorschlag, we flew to Holland and met with a company called AST that no one had heard of. They made monotube racing shocks, but they had like a street shock, which at the time no one had monotube adjustable street shocks, just didn't exist. So we kind of converted one of their street shocks with some motorsport stuff and made the single adjustable AST 4100, brought it to the States, and it was a huge success. It kind of changed the aftermarket coilover monotube market to where now everybody makes a single adjustable without remotes, and that's something we kind of pushed for. And that it kind of just went from there, and then by 08, I quit my day job and started doing this full-time and have been doing it full-time ever since.
Okay. And you were you making the camber plates at the same time, or was it the V8 swaps?
So the V8 swaps is kind of where everyone knew us from before we even started the business, starting back in 01, 02.
So that's what you're known for.
And that's what I was known for. A friend of mine, Brian Matucci, who worked for Roush Engineering in Detroit and worked on the Bondurant cars and had a lot of hands-on experience designing suspension improvements for cars that were used in racing. He moved back to Houston, and we were roommates after college at one point, and so we knew each other well, known each other for 25 plus years. He started racing BMWs, and he was using a certain really popular brand of camber plate, and was really frustrated that he was always having to rebuild the spherical bearings and the radial bearings like on a weekly basis. They just didn't last. And he looked at the design and said, I can make something better than this. And we had both raced Mustangs in college. And Mustang, the Fox Mustangs were pretty crude cars and kind of heavier than their typical BMW. And but the aftermarket had used bigger, beefier components. He says, I'm going to make a BMW plate with a bigger bearing. And he did some kind of revolutionary things that we still do to this day in the actual spring perch and isolating the steering loads away from the spherical bearing. It's complicated, but it works. And he made a camber plate in his first try that was a home run. It was indestructible. And we have some of his original designs from 03 still on the road today that are, 13 plus years old, 14 years old. So he made 2 or 3 camber plate designs, him, and he had a business partner, but it was mostly him building it himself and doing it after hours. And it got too big. And by 05, end of 05, he said, I got to sell the business. I can't keep up with volume. And he was doing kind of small production runs. And I had a little bit more production, machining, and casting experience and jobs after college. And so we bought him out. I actually sold him my LS1 swap BMW for the business. And so he got that car And we got his business and had him as a consultant for a while. And we grew that to probably 15 different camber plate designs just in the first few years, and radically changed the way they were built and started CNC machining everything through outside shops. And so that kind of became our main product focus, was the camber plates. And that's why in 06, early on, we're like, we need a shock to pair up with our top mounts. So that we made the best money on the top mounts, but there wasn't a good shock in the sub $5,000 range to put them with. So that's where we got AST involved and became known as a suspension company, and did that for several years. And that's literally all we sold was top mount springs and camber plates.
Okay, so is it you and your wife the owners, or you, or how do you have it set up?
I started out with a business partner in 05, and in 09, the business had gotten big enough to split in two. My business partner wanted to pursue the AST distributorship model through North America and sell mostly through dealers. And I was more interested in selling to individual customers, and the camber plate business had kind of spawned off some other products. We did some motor mounts and wheel studs. And I wanted to kind of put our focus into that and grow our business instead of growing someone else's business, because we never really had a –
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so we split it in 09, and he kept the AST distributorship for several years, and we just were a dealer for him. And so it kind of split. So now, it's just me, my wife, because of the state of Texas, she is half ownership of everything, pretty much. But no, on paper, it's just me as the owner.
Okay. And so do you think of yourself as an entrepreneur? Did you go out to set a job, or was it just because of the other jobs that you were doing? Doing it for you? Yeah,
I think it's something you're kind of born with. It's tough. It was tough for me to work for other people. And I worked from, 94 to 08 for other people, 15 years or so. And I always felt like they could do so much better if they would just do this. And, maybe it's just a ego thing, but I just thought that I could do it better myself. Of course, it's much harder than you would think to start a business. And I wish I had more of a business background. I took some college classes, me and my wife both did, learned how to do QuickBooks and some things like that, learned legal stuff. I wish I would have done that sooner. We did that after the business split, and it was really helpful. But yeah, I think it's a bug you kind of get growing up. My father and stepfather were both kind of entrepreneur kind of people, mm-hmm. and I saw them, successfully and non-successfully running businesses on their own, and felt like someday I kind of knew at an early age, one day I want to own my own business. And I knew from motorsports I wanted to be in the automotive world, and just was looking for the right opportunity. And when the camber plate business that had come up for sale, I knew that was it. That was going to be the business, and it was a great idea. We expanded it radically and improved a lot of things, and now we have 30 some odd cars we cover.
Okay, and what made you decide to do that versus working for somebody else? So was there a single deciding factor on that one?
No, again, working for somebody else in motorsports it took skills that I necessarily didn't have. Being a good mechanic takes a skill set that takes years of experience and learning tricks that I just didn't have. I tried it for a while.
You mean reading a forum for 3 days straight? It doesn't make you an expert?
Yeah, exactly. And this was, when I worked at Houston Performance in the late 90s, forums were really in their infancy. And no one was sharing information, and no one was sharing pictures and video. There was no YouTube, so there wasn't an easy way to learn this stuff. It's not necessarily easy now, and there's a lot of forum experts that we kind of all giggle about that don't really know anything hands-on. But I didn't have the hands-on experience to be a mechanic or necessarily a tuner. I kind of dabbled in both, but wasn't necessarily that good at it. I was better at writing and doing specs and doing drawings and design work and the engineering side of things, and making the camber plates took engineering chops that I felt like I was pretty good at. I'd run an engineering team of about a dozen designers and draftsmen at one of the companies I worked at a young age, had built $18 million equipment a year in my early 20s. And so I felt like I could run a business that, made camber plates and a few other items. It's tough, but that was where my strength lies. So that's where I kind of wanted to be the owner, because that way I could guide the direction of design. And again, probably why I split with my business partner, because he wanted to pursue a more of a wholesale business model, just selling somebody else's product. And I wanted to sell our product and design and innovate new things ourselves.
And you touched on it just a little bit just now, but if people don't know who Terry is, he's very well known also for his forum posts and blogging ability. You spend probably half your day every day writing these crazy blog posts, and your forum has millions and millions of views and posts and all that sort of stuff. And that part of your business is what you excel at, right? If you're not wrenching in, you're not doing the machining, then you're writing posts, right?
Blogging about it. And that's one of the things we do very differently than other shops that build race cars. And we do, we have kind of four aspects to our business, and we'll talk about that later. But one of the aspects we do is we build cars, and we do a lot of testing on brand new cars, like the new Ford Focus RS that your business partner Todd has. We tore that car apart and looking for solutions to make the cars handle better. And when we do this, we take pictures and video, and we share that openly. When we race in competition in NASA, we share every aspect of the car, the settings, the pressures, those kind of things, which most competitors would never do. But I would rather make my customers faster than necessarily make me faster. I want us to represent the company well, but I would rather have 100 people representing me than me beating everybody. I want to make people faster. So we share things, and we do that through, like I said, in the mid-90s when I started my website, it was one of the first websites on the internet that had automotive pictures and pictures of engine blocks on a digital scale showing what they weighed. And instead of the, old wives' tales, a small block Chevy weighs 200 pounds. I'm like, no, it weighs 168 pounds. Here it is on a scale in digital. And it was irrefutable. And I started to realize that most people, even to this day, don't share a lot of tech on forums, on social media, Facebook. And so I spend, half my day taking pictures of things we're doing, showing how a car is getting built or fabricated, or what a car weighs on a scale with no fuel and the spare tire removed. Car magazines don't do that. Nobody does that. And it bugged me. And so when the Evo 9 came out, you would appreciate this. We went to Don Herring Jr.'s dealership, and we weighed 6 cars that day. Every version of the Evo 9, the SE, all the different packages, the RS, we weighed them all with the same fuel level with our digital scales all at once. And that article has been read hundreds of thousands of times. Some of our build threads on forums, our 2011, our S197 Mustang build thread had over 1 million page views. And a lot of our forum threads have gone over 1 million.
And this is on Vorschlag.com.
No, we share them. Usually,
you put them on
I'll usually write them on Vorschlag,
okay.
Which is a small kind of local forum that really only has like 400 members, but there's usually 100 people on there at any given time that are guests
linked over from somewhere else.
Yeah,
okay.
And I'll copy the build thread on other forums that we either sponsor or are friendly and let us do that. And so one of my build threads is usually on 6 forums at any given time, and I update them all at the same time, and I answer questions on each one, which is time consuming, but you reach different people in different markets that way.
Okay.
So the forum stuff takes a good bit of time, taking pictures, editing those, and showing things being weighed, showing things being measured. So it's irrefutable. It's like, hey, this is the digital dial caliper. This is what the measurement was. This is what it weighs on a scale to hundredths of a pound. So we try to do more of that because there's a lot of bad information out there and misinformation. And then we show in-car video of all of our track cars that we build, and show, sometimes you'll see me doing driver mistakes, making errors, but we can back up with that. We ran X lap time, and it's not just, it
feels faster.
Watch. They didn't time it with the phone. No, we're using real timing equipment and data logging, and it helps, believability.
And you're saying that other people aren't sharing tech, but I think what we both know on the back of our minds is there is no tech. Other people are not actually they're not actually weighing this stuff on scales. They're ballparking it, or they're
spitballing it.
Yeah. And it's obvious to people who are actually engineering it, and it's obvious to people who are just throwing stuff together. And I mean, when you get into racing, there's a distinct level of who's doing it right and who's not, right?
And I'm not taking away from any other shops or shop owners or race teams, but not most motorsport shops aren't run by engineers like you and I. And that's okay, but we just have a different mindset. It's all about the science. It's all about data and proving that, you can buy my, magic wizard part, or you can pay me for consulting and I'll design your suspension. And I've seen shysters left and right take people to the cleaners, at the highest levels, and they don't have the chops to back it up. So that early on when we started the business, my business partner wanted to pay somebody to drive our cars. I was like, heck no, I want to drive the cars because I want to learn and prove, be able to jump in someone else's car and run a competitive lap time.
And then you don't have to pay that guy to drive your car for the rest of eternity, right?
Yeah, and it was fun. That was what was fun about this business for me, is actually getting to drive hundreds of different cars a year, not necessarily in competition, but I can always call somebody up and say, hey, can I borrow your car? We need to go get a test lap in, and this, that, and the other. And then it's usually, the answer is yes, because I've, set a lot of track records. I've done a lot of races, got thousands of laps at different tracks here in town. And so we can do real testing without guesswork. So that's, yeah, but the engineering aspects of it, the weights, the weight balance, I can usually look at a car. I've weighed probably 1,000 cars on digital scales accurately, and I can usually look at a car and guess within a couple percentage points of what it's going to weigh. And it's a troubling fact that the newer the car, the heavier it's getting, the more crash standards and insulation and sound deadening, and cars are getting fatter and heavier and bigger, and the tires aren't necessarily getting bigger, and the engines are getting better, but not proportionally. So I'm seeing some disturbing trends from an engineering aspect that you understand and I understand, because we've weighed cars and torn them apart. We know, sometimes you need to start with an older car anymore, because now they've got cars that park themselves and drive themselves, and pretty soon we're not going to be able to race them. That's
you're going to have a Model S and you're just going to put it on autopilot and let it race itself.
You joke, but we're not far from that. Volkswagen did that with one of their cars, and I think some of the big.
I think I've seen one of those. Audi did it at an F1 race, right?
Yeah. So in the 90s in F1, we saw the self-driving cars where the drivers, all they did was steer. Yeah. They didn't brake, they didn't gas, they didn't shift. They just steered. And I don't want that to happen in motorsports. So,
okay.
But yeah.
So how has location played a role in your success?
That's a good question. We're in North Dallas. I kind of grew up here. I left and came back. And it does matter. Being near in DFW, we have basically 3 road courses right here in town with TMS's road course, Motorsport Ranch, Eagles Canyon Raceway. So we have and there's like 6 autocross clubs and multiple autocross sites. So every weekend of the year that it's not, raining, and even usually when it is, there's a lot of motorsports going on here. And I think that matters. I think you need to be at events and either supporting your customers or racing or both. And that's helped us here because there's a lot going on in North Texas and in other parts of the country. Indy is a great hub of racing, and we talked about that earlier at lunch. And California, there's a lot of stuff going on. East Coast, there's a lot. So, but yeah, I wouldn't know what to do in the middle of Nebraska. If I wasn't near a racetrack, I think that would be tougher. No knocking on Nebraska, but yeah, location matters. As far as my business, I ran my business out of my house for the first 5 years and was more profitable than I ever thought it could be because the overhead was so low. As soon as I moved into a commercial space and overhead, and we started doing service work, and it mattered where we were so we could get walk-in business, but it kind of didn't now. And now I'm trying to think of getting away from all the hustle and bustle to get a little bit more remote to get overhead costs down.
There's an awesome meme that I've seen, and probably everybody in corporate world's seen it, where there's a picture. It's 3 pictures where you have a huge skyscraper, and the guy at the top of it's like, I wish I were a small business again. Yeah. And the guy at the bottom in the little, out of his garage is like, I wish I were a medium business. And the medium business guy is like, I wish I were a big business. And it's just a big cycle, right?
It is. And I've worked for Fortune 500 companies, and I've worked for small companies, and it's a different experience. And yeah, it's still work. That's why they call it. That's why they pay you. There is no, magic solution. And same thing goes for owning a business. We used to be bigger when we were the big ASC distributor, and I had as many as 9 employees at one time, but I wasn't necessarily happier. I was busier and more hectic. And you've talked to other people in your interviews that talked about downsizing and it made their life easier and more profitable. And that's something you always got to consider is there's a happy medium somewhere. Yeah, I don't know how we got on this tangent, but yeah, location. Right now we are very accessible next to 2 big highways in Plano. You can get to anywhere and get here from anywhere pretty quickly, but I just don't have a lot of walk-in customers that turn into actual business. So I'm now rethinking: do I need this giant lobby and displays and parts that no one ever comes in and buys? They buy them online.
Yeah,
and our big builds happen, and some of our biggest builds, people ship me cars from Hawaii and Arizona. They've never even met me. Uh-huh. So do I need a big walk-up customer lobby kind of business? I don't know.
So the location for you more or less is accessibility to racetracks and being able to test your products is more important than having access to customers, right?
Yeah, I think, and selling other people's parts, or OPP, which we've talked about, it's tough to make a living just doing that.
Yeah.
And nobody stocks anything anymore because you can't afford to. Because people will buy from Amazon or Summit or the cheapest online place they can to save $1, and so they don't walk in to buy parts anymore, other than like lubricants, oil and stuff. I really don't have walk-in customers, and so yeah, do I really need that? part of the business anymore. It's made me rethink. I've had 2 shops now, and I've spent 20, 30 grand each time I moved, updating the building and making a really pretty hardwood floors in the lobby and plasma screens and all that. And does it really make a difference? I don't know.
I couldn't tell you.
It's tough to say.
You're a little more upscale than what we do with Evo stuff, I think, because you do deal with some pretty big, expensive builds. But yeah, I guess it's if the people are sending you those cars and not even actually coming to your store, then I don't think it should matter, right?
Well, it shouldn't. The one thing I'm real big on, and you've commented on it before, is the shop being clean, climate controlled, organized, so that when we do show pictures of builds, it's not some danky, dark shop with everything on the floor. And that I think is more important than having a pretty lobby or we have a big lounge upstairs with all these comfy chairs. No one ever goes up there. It's like, why do we have this? So as I, am in my 12th year of this business, I'm rethinking things, and there's some things that do matter and some things that don't. And I've just kind of learned the hard way. There's no guide for this. You guys do, consulting, and I'm sure you've seen a ton of shops done on the low end, on the high end, and I don't know where the happy medium is, but it's somewhere in between of a super expensive building with, glitz and glamour and champagne fountains and working in the, under a tree in the hot sun. There's some happy medium there. And I think for our kind of long-term builds, I want to do more of having the fancy lobby, because if customers are sitting in my lobby, they're usually talking to me or somebody else.
Right, exactly.
Costing me time. So, the shorter jobs and day work, we're doing less of, and we're doing more big builds. And they're easier. I worked as a project engineer, project manager, and it's easier for me to plan for a 6-month build than it is for a 1-day build. Because you get into a 1-day build and like, oh, we found this one part is broken that we didn't know about. Now I got to overnight parts and jump through hoops and tie up a lift and scramble. But when it's a 6-month build, there's not those short-term surprises tend to go away.
Okay, so you're because you do post online a lot, you're very vocal and you're very blunt, I guess, is the best way of taking it.
Too blunt, unfiltered.
And even actually, like the first time when we started getting acquainted with each other was after the Pikes Peak crash. Yeah, we had some very, I guess, angry phone calls back and forth for about a month there. But
yeah, it was you were there firsthand, and we're in the middle of the build, and I respect that. And looking at it from afar, I had. There's things I can't really talk about, but there were people involved that you had no control over that I thought were gonna cause trouble, and they did. And it's just we were both wrong and we're both right, and yeah, it's frustrating. But yeah, I can be a little unfiltered, and I've burned a few bridges.
But so back to this, like you being blunt about what it is. So you're very open with like what you struggle with and things that make you mad and stuff. So what's something that you like? Tell us a time that like maybe you've doubted yourself, and like how do you overcome that feeling?
Man, how much time we got? No, I think probably once a year I kind of look at, the direction of the business and especially in our business is very cyclical. It follows the racing season, and we have ups and downs every year, and I can predict it within, ones of thousands of dollars of exactly what I'm going to make in a month. And it's frustrating that I keep getting stuck in these trends that follow the tax return season and the race season and Christmas and things like that. So that's frustrating every year, realizing that as hard as I try to create new products and make a more diverse product lineup, to get out of this cycle of, oh man, every June and July is always just going to be a kick in the teeth. And it always is. And that's frustrating to me. And then sometimes I just have to step back and go, you know what? It's going to pick up in September. It always does. And you just got to get through the lean times and prepare for them. And it's frustrating sometimes to know that you're stuck in a cycle that you can't control. The presidential election years are always terrible because no one wants to spend money. And in Texas, most of our customer base directly and indirectly is tied to oil, and the price of oil is down, and it's caused some of my builds to be delayed or struggle or payments are slower. And it's frustrating that it's out of my control, and I'm working harder than I ever have, 7 days a week. And sometimes it doesn't matter how hard you, show your business to your customer, and it's still a struggle that's out of my control. And that's something that frustrates me more than anything is when things go wrong. Like we were talking at lunch about my CNC machines. We just had a cascade of failures in the last week of things that were just dumb luck, and it all happened at once. It took both of my machines down, and I was, down for a week, and had outside consultants come in and look at them. And it was frustrating that we couldn't fix it ourselves because we're relatively new at CNC, and sometimes it's a bug in the code. And in this case it was. And it's frustrating that when I can't fix it myself,
Yeah.
is usually when I get the most frustrated.
And so, how do you move forward?
Sometimes I have to take a deep breath, and it's usually my wife, Amy, who's
We should have had here for this as well.
yeah, she really is the yin to my yang. I'm a type A personality, and I get fairly high strung and work too hard, and she kind of calms me down and says, "Hey, man, just back up, take a breath. We'll deal with it in the morning. The world's not going to end just because the CNC machine's down or just because customers aren't buying at the rate they did last month. It's just part of the cycle. It's part of it." And she definitely keeps me grounded. And sometimes she says, "Hey, you're being a spaz. You just got to calm down. You just got to just get past it." You get, we deal with customers, and a certain percentage of customers are crazy. And that's just something we could, it's a certain percentage, and I won't say what it is, but it is out of 100 customers, there's a certain number that are going to be trouble. The old 80-20 rule, that 80% of your business, 80% of your trouble comes from 20, whatever it is. I can't even get it right, but you just have to step back and say, "Hey, I just got to let this one go," not fight them, give them the refund. They're never going to be satisfied. Just,
And you're particularly good at firing customers, for lack of a better term, right?
Yeah, we all have to be good.
You've
at
inspired me to do that sometimes now.
Yeah, it's tough to build a relationship with a customer or start a build and then have to go, it's not working out. And especially when it gets ugly and they start name calling or starting smear campaigns. I've had people write into the Better Business Bureau just because they weren't happy about something they didn't buy from me. And you're always going to have a certain percentage of people that will never be happy. And it seems to be getting worse, not better. And I don't know if it's me, but every business owner I've talked to is the same way. So there's certain times you just got to let it go,
So what's the worst experience you've had in business?
The business partnership split was tough. It was like a divorce. It was a friend of 15 years, and we came to some irreconcilable differences that we just could not get past, and we are no longer friends. It is. Yeah.
Don't even talk to him anymore. Huh?
No, it's a shame. We were good friends in college and racing buddies. And just because of a couple of disagreements, it kind of festered and blew it. And we had to get lawyers involved, and it was really uncomfortable. And it's made me wary of any business partnership ever again. And we were both probably right in some of our desires and what we wanted to do with the business. Ultimately, his business is no longer in business, but that may be better for him than not. You're never going to make a ton of money in motorsports, and I've come to that realization, and it is what it is.
Okay. And so what's something, now that we've kind of talked about the bad things, what's something you're doing right now that has you fired up?
Oh, I love working with new chassis when they come out. Luckily, the automotive designers keep making cars terrible. The worse they are, the more products that they need to be fixed to be able to go on a road course and not just shred the tires in a handful of laps and overheat and go into limp mode in 2 laps. There's a lot of opportunities of not only suspension, but we do a lot of chassis, brake, cooling, safety, aero updates. A lot of what you do as well, but I'm usually on different cars. And so I see cars coming out that are heavy, that understeer badly, have fancy whiz bang parts that really don't work. And it's great because they keep building cars with struts, which means I'll always have a market for top mounts. And I know why they do it. They do it for packaging reasons and cost reasons, and we can always add camber to cars and fix a lot of problems. That's our main product line, but there's other stuff that we can do. So that gets me fired up. I'm excited. I'm also a little worried about electric cars. What am I going to do on that? Are people going to start racing those? I mean, when are we going to start seeing a Tesla spec series?
At least they still have shocks, right?
They do. I mean, they still have suspension for now. I mean, active suspension was always a worry. Electronic suspension, Magna Ride, all that was like, oh my God, we're not going to be able to sell shocks anymore. And luckily, they keep making these terrible suspension systems.
Yeah, MR dampers. We dealt with those at Lockheed on one of the ground vehicles I did at, and they were shitty.
Yeah, I mean, it's really expensive. I mean, it's thousands of dollars per ounce or whatever for the fluid, and they overheat, and they still do bad things, and they don't. It comes down to programming, really. But I just haven't seen any of these whiz-bang new sports cars with all the gadgets and doodads that are any better than, okay, that's cool. Let's take these shocks and springs and throw them in the trash, and let's put better wheels on them and get those 20-inch wheels off and get the Twingos and put some real race tires on them, and we can always make them faster. So that's exciting.
So product development really is your wheelhouse. You like doing that more than anything, and it drives you, right?
I look for it, and we went for several years, 2 or 3 years, where we didn't have any new products because we were struggling keeping up with demand of our existing products and had outside machine shops that were, our prices kept going through the roof, and oil field in Texas, drives in all over the country drives machining costs up. And oil field was so lucrative that the guys I'd been using for 5-10 years were quadrupling my minimum orders, were doubling my prices, and there was no rhyme or reason to it, and it was frustrating. So when these machinists started basically rejecting my normal orders and wouldn't help us do any prototyping, I got stuck. To make a new camber plate, we would take a car apart, make a lot of measurements, buy a top mount, reverse model it, make a 3D printed product, put it on the car, then make a metal product. It would get tweaked. And it's a process. It was taking me 6 months to make a new camber plate. Mm-hmm. It was spread out over time, and I could only do a few different designs a year, and there were more cars coming out that needed camber plates. So I was kind of stuck. And then my machinist quit doing prototypes for me. They were charging me outrageous, it's going to be $5,000 for me to program this one piece. I'm like, come on, you're killing me. So we finally just came to the conclusion we got to make our own parts in house, and bought the CNC machines, and that's a whole different thing.
We'll get into that later.
Yeah, but it really shortened the time from a car coming out to design and making a real working prototype in metal. And our record now is 48 hours.
From first designing to making a product.
So what used to take me 6 months or longer now can be done in ones of days.
Okay.
The Focus RS is coming out. Needs a lot of help. That's when we're gonna, we took Todd's car apart and measured it, and we realized we can't do a camber plate for the OEM spring because the OEMs are making it harder and harder and harder to do. There's nowhere for the spring to go physically. So we're going to have to do a coilover. So the coilover should arrive tomorrow. But literally it'll be a week between when we took it apart and when we make the camber plate, and get coilers on the car and really fix some fundamental issues. But no, doing prototypes and making new products. I mean, this year alone, I think we have an initiative on a hashtag, a new part every week. And we literally have been making a brand new part. Sometimes an assembly might have 8 or 10 parts. We're making a new part every week this year. So instead of having 2 or 3 camera plates a year, we're going to probably make a dozen or more, and other products that we're machining.
Okay, so we want to take a second here and talk about our partner, MSA. Before we continue on, I wanted to take a second and tell everyone about My Shop Assist. If you own or work for a performance shop of any type, take some time to think about how organized and efficient your operation is. Our goal at Do It For Living is to tell success stories in the industry and to educate you, the listener, on how to be successful in your business. My Shop Assist is a cloud-based shop management system developed to address the common shortcomings shops have. It enables you to track hours, pictures, notes, and even parts on every job at your shop. Manage your techs with the built-in calendar and assign tasks to them. The jobs can be exported to QuickBooks for accounting and billing. Customers can log in online and follow your progress on their car and digitally sign your work orders. MSA was designed to be simple to use and will help anyone from a one-man shop to the top-performing shops in our industry. Check out the system for free at myshopassist.com. Okay, so Terry, let's talk about your business. So tell us more about Vorschlag. How big is the space that you're in?
We're in a 70.
Do you lease it or do you own it?
Yeah, and that's a point of contention. We're leasing on our second commercial space now. And we're in 7,500 square feet. We started in my garage, 1,000 square foot garage, ran our distributorship for all of North America, AST, Vorschlag, 50 plus dealers out of there. Then we moved and started doing service work. We went to 4,000 square feet, and now we're at 7,500 square feet. We outgrow every time we move in. We outgrow it, and that's one of the problems that we've seen across the industry is people grow to the space that they have. And you end up storing too much stuff and cars, and that's a whole other aspect of the business is getting cars that are not making you money out of there that you know well.
Yes, very much.
So yeah, we're at 7,500 square feet now, really a 4,000 square foot shop. I think we need more shop space, less office space.
Okay.
When we moved into this place, the inventory of lease and purchase properties was very small. And we almost bought a $1 million building, and the deal fell through at the last minute. We kind of had to take what we could get. Uh-huh. And we made it work. We did a lot of work, knocked down walls, ceilings, and made a lobby out of a bunch of offices.
You spent a ton of money to make that place look nice, huh?
We did for 3 whole years, yeah. And that's something that I probably wouldn't do again, is spend a ton of money on somebody else's property and improve it. And we did last time. We put in nice fixtures in the bathrooms and hardwood floors and painted every wall and moved walls around and made a really nice space for the owner of the building, which doesn't really help me when I move out.
Yeah, because sometimes they tell you they'll give you discounted rent for building modifications, but I've never had anybody ever actually follow through with that.
You know, we negotiated up front where normally when you lease a building, they'll do a build out for you. Uh-huh. And we negotiated like 3 free months rent if they didn't do any build out. Said just get the electrical separated for our property and we'll do the rest. Uh-huh. And they couldn't believe it, and we did it. in about a month and a half, and they're like, wow, y'all did a really nice job. So, one of my shop manager is a really good carpenter and finish guy. So, that helped. He helped build our last 2 shops out, and our guys, our crew pitched in, and wives and friends and everything. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I've been to the one you're building. I was in your last building, and that one was really nice. And it wasn't nearly big enough for what you had, but
this one's about right. We have basically 3 technicians right now, and 3 lifts, and we could use another lift. We have a big fabrication area. We have a CNC room, and we kind of outgrown it. We're kind of cramped in the CNC room. We've got too many cars in there as usual. Okay. You should come by. It's a lot nicer than the last place, but really well lit, really clean. We did the floors, painted all the walls, so it's bright. Good 10-ton air conditioning unit out there. Keeps it at least in the high 70s, low 80s when it's 105 outside.
Yeah, my shop's 106 last week.
It's brutal. And we did that when we worked out of the house. It was an unair conditioned but insulated a closed garage. And yeah, it was 100 plus. I had a thermometer out there, and when it's 100 degrees, your efficiencies, I mean,
it's bad.
You can only work about 4 hours out of the 8-hour day. You're just sweating, and you can't get Gatorade down fast enough. And so
it's right in front of me here,
right here, you got to have them. And that's one of the things I do. The last 2 shops is I made sure, and I spent a good bit of money air conditioning our shops, but it makes it to where the guys, and we've learned this through using my shop assist, the guys are a lot more efficient. We're billing more hours for a given day because they're not, just throwing up their lunch because they're having heat exhaustion or just sweating and just dying, have to come in and cool off. So most of my guys don't come into the office just to wash up before they go to lunch, and they just put their heads down and work.
Okay. Have you ever written a formal business?
We did initially when we started Vorschlag. We wrote a business plan. It was a good exercise. My business partner at the time was had just gotten his MBA, so it was something he was familiar with from business school. I don't know if we really followed it, but it was a good exercise anyway, and I encourage people to do it. And if you don't know how to do it, hire a consultant to help you do it.
Okay. So have you been following it at all lately, or have you kind of not really?
That was 12 years ago, so it's hard to follow something over that long of a period when our business morphed from selling other people's parts to making our own parts to building race cars to having a machine shop. It's tough to follow that plan, but I probably should, every 5 years rewrite one. And we do an annual meeting where, me and my wife and even my employees will sit down and make goals for the next year. We meet every Monday morning for 15 minutes, everybody in the shop. We have our Monday morning meeting and plan out what's going on in the week. And so everybody knows and helps guide where we're going to go over the next week and longer.
Yeah, and actually, some of the interviews we've done, some people are revising their business plan every year to kind of keep themselves on track to the plan. So it's a good thing to work for.
Sure.
How many employees do you have right now?
We just added. I got to count this up. 1, 2, 3. I just added my 6th employee.
Okay.
And I've had as few as 2 and as many as 9.
And you're up and down all the time, aren't you?
We are. It kind of goes with the business, and we've gone from doing a lot of simple suspension installations and repair work to more serious fabrication, roll cages, building race cars out of street cars. And our average job price has probably gone from, $800 to 20-something thousand, and we have 6-figure jobs. So I've kind of found a good balance of, fabricators and mechanics, and I have a shop manager who's also a mechanic and kind of manages a lot of the day-to-day stuff back there. So it's a good mix. I could probably, if I got enough builds, long-term builds, I'd probably add another guy. But it's really hard finding people to do what we need to do that are a really good mechanic, a really good fabricator, and that can, log their jobs. We make them log every task in MSA so that I can bill it correctly. And it's tough to find somebody that can do all of that. So
So you're using MSA to manage your people. Is there anything else? Do you have a shop manager? Or is that kind of you?
I do. Brad Maxey's my shop manager, and he manages the day-to-day service jobs. And customers want to come in for a track inspection, or they want to come in and have a 1 or 2 or 5-day job. He typically does the estimates for those and manages those, and I do the invoicing. And we both kind of order parts, but they usually all come through me.
Okay. So I should have asked you this before, or told you ahead of time, but do you have a breakdown of your sources of revenue? You're doing a little bit of everything. You have part sales, like OPP. You have your own stuff.
Yep.
You do service. You're manufacturing. And at lunch, you kind of mentioned that you do some engineering work for other people, too. So do you have kind of a breakdown of how that goes for you?
It's probably still and we do track it. And my wife would be able to have those numbers better than me. It's about half shop and half part sales.
Okay.
And more than half of the part sales are OPP.
Okay.
But we're really selective in what we carry. We carry only a handful of shock brands. We're kind of shock snobs. And, on a single or double adjustable like MCS, that's a $3,500 set of shocks and internal levels.
Okay.
And they can go up from there. So it's hard not to sell other people's parts, especially when they work hand in hand with my parts. I make the most margin on the parts we make because we manufacture them in-house. There's no middlemen. We buy very few parts from outside of us other than some laser cut pieces and a few bearings. So I try to push my own products and sell more than half of those through dealers.
Okay.
I have 53 dealers the last time I counted across the globe of our top mounts. So, it's kind of a mix, and it's a tough balance to keep the right number of employees so that they don't get overwhelmed. And at some parts, the service part of the business was kind of carrying the load when we were out of inventory for a period of time there when we switched over to CNC in-house. And so now the CNC has got up and operational and is more efficient. The parts part is kind of is holding its own weight again. It's about half and half.
Okay. So you've diversified your at least your revenue, so you're not reliant on one little thing. Huh?
No, you can't have just one source of income anymore. And we used to really only work on BMWs when we first started, and we got into Evos and Subarus and Miatas and Corvettes, and now we've gotten into a lot more cars to diversify.
Are you still doing a lot of the V8 conversions?
Yeah, we still usually have one or two in the shop at any given time, and the V8 conversion kits, for the E36, last time I counted was over 150 kits we'd sold since we really went into mass production in 2007.
And for people that haven't seen these, I mean, they look OEM. I mean, they're exceptional V8 conversions. Yeah. And they come with a price tag too, right?
They do. Most of our turnkey, you bring me a car and I supply everything else, it's going to be $28,000, $30,000, which seems crazy. But then you see the air conditioning work and all the gauges work, and it's quiet and it rides well and there's no vibrations, there's no leaks. When we do a turnkey job, it is complete. Whereas a lot of the forum guys make it seem like, you can do this for $500. It's just, for every 100 phone calls I get about an LS swap kit, I sell one.
Okay.
So many emails that barely are written with any grammar or punctuation. People have no idea what this costs. And I try to get that out there. And we have a frequently asked questions email I send. Hey, this is not something you can just put together in a weekend. It's a lot of work. You're integrating a lot of systems of a car. And you're taking an engine and computer out of a completely different car and sticking it into something else. It's tricky.
Okay, and you the latest one I saw was the BRZ V8 conversion. Is that a kit you guys are manufacturing, or is that just kind of a one-off thing?
No, sometimes you get down a path like we did a 99 Miata.
Yeah.
And we just got it running. It was a real struggle because it wasn't really a good candidate for V8 swap. And there are V8 kits made for this car, and it is not a good car for these swaps. You got to change everything because Mazda did a really good job of engineering the car to the limits of what it comes with. A 1.6 or 1.8 liter engine. So the brakes and the hubs and the half shafts and everything are teeny tiny, and they're perfectly sized for 140 horsepower engines. You put 400 to the wheels through there and everything breaks. And we saw this with other people's kits, and we over-engineered everything to the point where we could never make an affordable kit. It's going to be a kit that costs $30,000.
Okay.
And then you got to make it all work on top of that. So sometimes we end up with one-offs. We've done a lot of the E36, Z3, and E46 BMWs.
Okay, that's kind of the specialty.
180 of those kits, more or less, for those cars.
Okay.
But the BRZ is our next big hot one. We got one 98% done, and then I had to fire the customer. It was a tough situation. I didn't like it. It was a real kick in the teeth, but we just couldn't finish the job for him because he just wouldn't let us. And the integration with the CAN bus has been a real challenge. It's not something we specialize in. We've had 3 or 4 different programs we tried to work with. We have yet to find one that can actually do it. Hopefully that happens because the more modern the car, the more networked they are.
Yeah, once you find somebody who can do that, you'll be standalone of top of the heap of people who do V8 conversions.
Even if I don't even sell that component of the wiring, it'll help us sell the hard parts we make, the mounts, transmission crossover, the exhaust headers, the drive shafts.
So anybody listening who knows how to do CAN bus integration between systems, call Terry.
And I've had so many people call and tell me they could.
And none of them follow through. That's like web pages too. Like nobody can ever build my web page.
Exactly. I've had $100 for every guy. I'll make your web. I'm like, yeah, okay, great.
So what kind of advertising and marketing are you doing?
That's another one I've struggled with over the years. I think, my time and post college has happened as the internet began. And we've seen the magazine newspaper market completely disappear almost. There's still a few diehards. So I used to do some magazine ads. Those have kind of tapered off. I did some ads with Grassroots Motorsports magazine. Love those guys. But it was just tough. And as their advertising revenues dwindle, their prices seem to go up. And I don't know if it's worth it. Did a lot of forum sponsorships early on, still do. Still struggle with, is it really worth this much every quarter to sponsor this forum? But that's kind of where we've made our mark, is on the forum. So I still, even though those are kind of fading out a bit compared to social media, so I still advertise there. I haven't done a lot of the targeted Facebook ads, and I've come to your consulting classes, and I know I need to do it, but it's not the way Facebook wants you to do it. I need to do it the smart way, like you've taught us, of inputting, getting to the right customer base. So, and getting Shopify, we're moving to that from our existing.
Oh, and I've been starting to dabble with more of the customized stuff on that, and it's way powerful. You can do quite a bit with it. So
I may have you help us do some of the customization, because Shopify is set up to be pretty basic, and what we do and what we sell has a lot of options. And then we found some limitations within Shopify, and we're already hitting that wall of, some of our camber plates might have 140 different iterations, and every one of those has to be. Shopify makes I can't just say, okay, pick your spring, pick your strut, pick this. I have to make all and so it's a little trickier. Yeah. So,
And so you do a bunch of other things other than advertising and marketing. So one of them is obviously your blogging, which we've touched about. And do you think that plays a role in your success? Is that pretty important to your business?
Oh, I think it's crucial. And over the last 6 months, I've taken over the kind of bookkeeping, service writer, purchasing role, and I'm doing less of that. And I think I've noticed a difference. I've noticed that sales aren't as strong, so I'm trying to burn the candle at both ends, and at night do a little bit more of that. I definitely am behind on a lot of my build threads on some of the forums, and that hurts. But yeah, I got to stick with it. And we do a multi-tiered approach. We do I might have a forum post that I might work on for a couple days that might have 20,000 words in it. And then I'll link to that from my blog, which might have, the forum post might have 30 or 40 pictures. The blog might have 3 pictures and 500 words or 200 words, and it links to the forum post. And then in my social media stuff, we'll have a short blurb that links to the blog. So I got this multi-tiered thing that works. And if you have a really short attention span, you may not get past Facebook, but if you do, you might get to the blog. And if you want to learn more, you might get to the forum. So doing that takes a lot of time.
Okay.
And it makes it, and people are like, oh yeah, you can probably just bang this out. I was like, oh my God, I write like 20 hours a week at least. and I spend probably an hour a day just taking pictures.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other thing you do is the shop vehicles. So the big one, at least the biggest one that I've known you done, was the red Mustang that you built.
Yeah.
That was your car, right?
It was. We bought that car when the S197 Mustang was made from 05 to 14. And in the 2011 model year, in 2010, they came out with another 100-plus horsepower with the Coyote 5-liter V8. And me and my wife went and test drove one of those, and we test drove a brand-new Camaro, 5th-gen Camaro, that had an LS motor that I love, but you couldn't see out of the car, and it was really heavy. And, even though it had IRS, it was not as good of a car as the S197 for the money. So we bought one, took a gamble, and we buy new cars. We bought an Evo 10, or my business partner did when it first came out. We had several BMWs. And every couple of years we try to get a new car, and hopefully we catch them right when they're hot. And we're like, we got the Coyote Mustang when it first came out, developed a lot of suspension parts for it. And the best way to show that off, we figured out, was NASA time trial racing, where you're not banging wheel to wheel. It was still a street legal car, so it related to people. People understood it, but it put down some really, really fast lap times, punched above its weight, as it were. And me and my engineer Jason are really good at finding loopholes and exploiting loopholes, and we did a lot with that car. We've probably had between us, 24 rules written because we found a loophole that they needed to close. So in that car, we found some loopholes, ran the car really, really heavy, with a lot of power in the class it was in. And when the TT3 class came out, we did really well, set 16 track records in that car, won dozens of races. And we were known for that. But before that car, there were several others that, before we kind of came into your realm, that we did a lot with the Evo 10. We did a lot with the E36 BMW, won national championships in those. Our very first, our Alpha car, E36 LS car, I bought back from Brian Matucci several years later. He refined it. We refined it further and did a lot of racing in that. That car was just a beast. So yeah, the Mustang has probably been our most popular. It was our first, million post forum thread. But we've had a number of cars. Again, every year or two we try to add another shop car. This year we're racing 2 different cars.
And they're it's one of them's an older Vet, right?
Yeah, the 92 Corvette we're racing. We found a loophole years ago. And that no one ever exploited. And a buddy had bought a car and said, hey, you should build this for TTC. And we did. And we got a lot of pushback from the national office because we pushed, we found some big loopholes that they left wide open. And, the first event we did, we reset the track record by 7 seconds. And they're like, hold on, whoa. If you bring this to nationals, it's coming home in boxes. So we did that car. We've got an E46 330 we're doing in another NASA class that was classed really well until January when they threw a bunch of points at it. So sometimes you're just at the mercy of the rules, and we try to always find something that's relevant that we can learn from, that we can teach others with, and even if it doesn't necessarily class perfectly or gets reclassed, we try to share what we learned, and sometimes it's, hey, don't buy this car.
Okay, and so you're manufacturing. Have you done trade shows before?
We have. We did PRI several years early on when we were the AST distributor. We did that on our dime, and realized later that promoting someone else's brand on your dime is not real smart. We did all their warranty work in the U.S. on our dime, and we'll never do that again. Definitely the trade shows work if you're looking for more dealers. We found a lot of dealers, but we found out that selling someone else's parts as a wholesaler, we didn't make a lot of margin on the shocks. So that's why I was not sad to see that go. The trade shows worked out well for where I'm at now in Vorschlag and selling my products. I don't have a problem selling through dealers. I have too many dealers. I've actually been kind of firing dealers left and right when they don't really bring any value add to the sale. Okay. So trade shows make sense when you're trying to grow, when you're trying to find dealers. Okay.
And do you sponsor people? I see your stickers on a lot of cars, but I don't know if that's you giving them product or what.
Yeah, no, generally not. We have I can probably count on one hand the number of people we sponsored over the past 12 years. A lot of our customers are really, like the fact that we share a lot, that we're really helpful. We bend over backwards to have the best customer service, and I've had people come back over 12 years and buy 4 or 5 different cars worth of suspension from us. So some of those guys are just really good supporters of Vorschlag and know that, we bust our hump to try to make them faster, try to help them sort their car. And so they'll run stickers. They'll ask us, hey, send me stickers. And I wish I could send out more than I do. But for the most part, if it's got big Vorschlag stickers on it, they're either a friend of us, they're just being nice, or we developed a lot on the car. Okay. We have a test program. We call it the Vorschlag Test Pilot Program. It's kind of a corny little name, but we have testers that help us develop new products for cars, and we have kind of a contract. And we've learned a lot from you guys about the consulting thing about, write a contract and make sure that everybody gets what they are looking for and that they follow, that the end customer follows through with what they're getting their sponsorship for. So no, it's mostly our own shop cars or just friends that want to run Vorschlag stickers that have bought a lot of stuff from us.
Okay. And tell me about your dealer network. How do you handle that? And like you said at the trade shows, it's easy. It's a good place to pick up dealers, but is it mostly somebody looking for a camber plate that owns a shop and calls you and orders one? Or how do you handle
we
that?
have 2 tiers of dealers, and our premier dealers are guys that buy a lot of camber plates. They sell a lot of different shocks to a lot of different people, big shops. And some of our best premier dealers used to be competitors. They used to make their own camera plates and stopped because they liked our design. They're like, we can't build it for what you sell it for. And we give them a decent margin, which is hard to find anymore. But they have to be an installation shop. They have to understand how the stuff goes together. I don't want drop ship dealers. They don't bring any value. They don't answer any questions. They dump their customer problems on me. And ordering our camera plates, it's not just a one-size-fits-all widget. It's pretty specialized. Every single one is built to order. I have to know the exact strut and spring diameter, and sometimes even other aspects of what model it is, because we might have 2 or 3 versions for a given car. It's tough to find dealers. So my top tier guys are higher volume guys, but that do installations. And my second tier guys are just, they might buy 1 or 2 sets a year. They make a smaller margin, but they have to be an installation shop as well.
That's what I am. I think I fall under your lowest tier.
Yeah,
I did a group buy. I think I bought 10 of them, and then I don't think I bought one since then.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get on to your CNC machines next. This is a story that is epic. I think it's epic. Yeah. You touched on it a little bit. You kind of said that you started by outsourcing everything, and you were spending $10, $20, $30,000 a month in other people CNCing for you. So tell us how this kind of went down and how it works for you.
When we first started the business, we bought Matucci's Motorforce Engineering.com out and brought it under Vorschlag, brought his 2 or 3 designs under our roof, and started changing the way they were made to try to save a lot of labor and make them better. And even the bearing holder used to be a multi-piece design. Now it's a one-piece CNC, and it made more sense to me because I had some manufacturing background. So I worked with some machine shops I knew in Houston, and some other ones I met at trade shows. And for years, that worked out pretty well, but they always had a minimum order that was usually an ouch. It was usually, man, I got to sit on a lot of product. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the year, I had to claim all that as, property tax of I paid X number of dollars for all these bearing holders, and I got 300 of them on the shelf for this one model. So now I can do stuff in smaller volumes if I want, and it doesn't look as bad on the books. But so we had a bit of time there when oilfield kind of drove the machining. It was really globally. There were guys and we were having trouble getting AST shocks made when oilfield started blowing up because the parent company of AST was a machinist, had multiple machine shops all over Europe, and he was building stuff for oilfield. So other forces kind of drove us to have to take this in-house and not being able to prototype and not being able to make stuff quickly. It was a big investment. Jason and I had both had a background, and we had a manual lathe, and he'd run Bridgeports manually, and I'd learned some of that in school as well. But jumping in and doing your own CNC machining is a big task that I tell people, do not take this lightly. Hire an outside consultant before you even think about looking at machines. I went and talked to local business owners that were machining their own parts and talked to a few and kind of whittled it down to a couple of brands of CNC machines. Mm-hmm. And where we happened to be moving 2 years ago was right across the parking lot from the global headquarters of one of these big suppliers. And it really worked out for us because I can walk across the parking lot when I get stuck and grab them by the ears. They come help me. And we do. You're going to need help. You're going to need a lot of help. We took classes. We both took multiple classes, thousands of dollars there. You buy really expensive 5-figure software just to do the CAM software, the computer-aided machining, and a compiler, and not only the machines but the tools and making fixtures. And it took us months before we were even making a part that we could sell.
So give us an idea of the scope of this. Like, what do the machines cost?
They can cost for a new machine as little as $100,000, sometimes even less. When they cost much less than that, they're usually a reason. Yeah. There's certain controllers that you want to have. The FANUC controller is really common. That's a separate piece of the CNC machine, and it kind of goes with it. So there's certain things you want to look for. We bought one new machine and one used machine. Okay. The used machine was a fraction of the cost of a new one. But you get what you pay for. Yeah. The spindle speeds have gotten much faster in the past 10 years. So our CNC mill is a little bit older and it's a little bit slower. And it's a little more problematic, and we've had to do some customization of that machine. So figure $100,000 per machine is to do moderate volumes is probably safe. But some of the 5-axis stuff is $300,000-$400,000, and you can spend into the millions. You don't buy more machine than you think you can start with, and don't just think, well, I'm going to teach myself this and it's going to be easy. It's not. It's taken several outside consultants and teaching and a lot of trial and error. And
the problem is error means tooling, and give us an idea of the tooling cost.
So the tooling, they said for each machine, budget 10% of the cost of the machine for tooling.
Uh-huh.
It's like, $10,000, that's fine. No, that gets you going. There's a lot of tool holders you got to buy, and the tool holders are hundreds of dollars a piece. But once you have those, they don't really wear out. But then the actual tools, those wear out all the time. Cutting aluminum is like butter, and the tools last forever. Cutting steel is much, much harder, and it just eats tools. Carbide,
And that's what you're doing a lot of steel for the bearing holders.
Yeah,
right?
The bearing holders are all steel. The main plates are usually aluminum, so we do a little bit of both. A lot of our spring perches are aluminum, so it kind of depends. But cutting steel is a lot harder than cutting aluminum, a lot slower, it eats a lot more tools. Coolant is you write books on just that, managing your coolant. You think it's just some liquid. No. You got to keep it can get nasty stuff growing in it. You got to keep the concentration up. because you're constantly cutting yourself. I mean, you wouldn't think of how many times a day you cut yourself. Your CNC, there's sharp edges everywhere on parts. So you don't want some nasty, funky fluid getting in an open wound, and it can really get bad. But we've been really good about that. We've got chemical testers, and we check it every day, and it evaporates out, and you got to keep the concentration right. So there's a whole thing about coolant. The tooling can get expensive, and it's an ongoing cost. Making fixtures. The first time you make something, you might make one of something. We're doing 8 at a time and more on as we get better at it.
That's the vices that hold it down, right?
Well, it's like a big giant block of aluminum that you machine to hold all the pieces after one of the steps.
Okay.
Some of the stuff on our mill, we have multiple vices, and the vices are $600 or $1,000 a piece, and they're super high quality machine parts. And if you want to make stuff down to the 1,000th of tolerance, you got to have some good tooling. Tool setters, there's a whole array of things you end up buying you never thought had anything to do with machining. But making the fixtures, you might spend $300 or $400 just on the metal to make it, and it might take you 3 or 4 hours to make it. But then it's an investment, and it lasts a while.
And so for people who are wanting to get into the CNC thing, what's nice about your business is you already had a product, already had a web page that people wanted, and you had the need for the machines. So you already had products. As soon as they came in the door, you had stuff to make with them. So is your advice to other people that maybe like, hey, I want to buy a CNC, but like, what am I going to make with it?
Yeah, you got to have a product that sells. I mean, I did this for 10 years, built the business up from nothing out of my garage to a 7-figure business before I ever thought about buying CNC machines. And it was still a huge gamble. And it's just now, a year and a half later, starting to pay off. We're starting to see profitability now because we reduced our part cost by 80%.
Okay.
And I can stock more, and I run out of parts less, and I can dynamically change. I can be in the middle of a product run and go, oh, we need to make this part bad. Let's stop this, put it aside. Sometimes we're just making stuff just to keep the machines going, keep the CNC guys busy. But sometimes we can react. Oh, shelve that, stop what you're doing, put it on a rack. We got to make these right now. We got 3 orders held up.
Okay.
And so I like that flexibility, but it comes at a cost. I mean, these machines cost, most people don't have $100,000 just to plop down and go, oh, yeah, just give me a couple of those and set them up. And setting them up is $1,000 a piece. And just getting them squared on the floor costs money, and wiring them costs money. It costs a lot of money. So my advice is don't buy, if you're starting a new business and you're going to be making parts, do not buy CNC machines right off the bat.
Outsource if you can.
Outsource. Oh my God. If you're an engineer and you know how to design and make good drawings, do that. Let that be your value add, and then work on the business and get the product demand to where you have to do it in-house. You'll know. You'll get to a certain point where like, I'm spending enough to buy a brand new car every month and giving it to one guy to make one part for me. That's insane. So yeah, I don't spend $250,000 a year with machine shops anymore. But I spend a chunk to pay for those machines and keep them tooled. And I've got 2 employees, one a programmer, Jason, my engineer, who's kind of learned it on the job. And I got one guy, he sits there and feeds parts in and QCs. That's all he does all day. He's running 2, sometimes 3 machines.
Okay. So here's the big question. How many hours a week are you working?
I'm ashamed to say it's 7 days a week. Most of the time it's 80 to 90 hours a week.
Okay.
It's I can't keep doing it. I've been doing it for 12 years. More so since since 2009, since we split. So I'm not proud of that fact. That means I'm not doing something right. I have no other life outside of this. In 2016, there have been 3 days where I have not worked. 3 different Sundays where I wasn't at a racetrack or I wasn't at the shop, and that's embarrassing. And that's not something to be proud of. It's not something to brag about. It's the truth. I'm not doing something right to have to work that hard to keep getting going. We're profitable. We're making money, and it's good. But I need to.
The skill you're bringing in and the tooling you have should be bringing in a lot more. Essentially,
it should. And we're still kind of in that point where we're adding new products now, so we're having to go even faster and go even harder. Earlier this year, for the first 6 months, the first 5 months of this year, me and my wife were running the machines after hours and weekends, and it was killing us. And about 3 months ago, I hired a guy, and we kind of taught him on the job, and he feeds parts, and he's learning how to do CNC work, and that's been a real we've kind of scaled down, and my wife is only working an extra 10 or 20 hours a week instead of, because she has a day job too. So I've cut her hours down. She's forced me to leave before dark, So right now in the past 3 months, I've kind of scaled it back to probably 65 hours a week.
Okay.
But earlier this year, it was still 90 hours. It was nuts.
Okay, and so you're married to Amy, but you don't have any kids. So
okay,
you don't have to deal with that, right?
I don't know how you do it, brother. That is a full-time job in and of itself. Much respect. Having kids, especially young kids, running a business, man, I don't know how you do it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't work this many hours and do that. I know that.
Okay, and does the pay justify the time spent?
No, probably not. No, it's more than that. It's more than just making money. You're not going to get rich in motorsports unless you already start really rich. And that's the best quality I have to tell people to have when they want to become a business owner in the motorsports related field is start with rich parents. I have an awesome wife who works her butt off and basically works 2 jobs. And there's been some months where we're just using her income, but lately it's, give it 10, 12 years. You're gonna make some money.
Okay. When it
doesn't justify.
Once your machines are paid off and you sell them, then you're good, right?
Yeah. No, it's more than just that. What I was trying to get to before was, getting to go do some of the stuff we're doing, cutting edge stuff, brand new cars before anybody else. That's satisfying to me. And it was one of the better parts of engineering when I built a lot of equipment was seeing, I built that, I designed that, my crew put that together, and it's it was a piece of fracking equipment or cementing equipment in oil field, which you can't get real excited about. But when you build a race car for somebody or yourself, and it's like, this thing is unbeatable, this thing is fast, and it's that's satisfying more than just, oh man, I'm just raking in money. You're never gonna get rich doing this.
Okay. And what are the primary tools of what you're doing there? So you said you use MSA. What else are you using? Like you're a QuickBooks, big QuickBooks person.
QuickBooks, since day one. I'm so glad. Every single receipt, every check, it's all done through QuickBooks. If you don't, you're throwing money away.
And you have a QuickBooks expert, Jerry. Is it
Jerry Seco?
Yeah.
Okay. He's a great guy. He's really helped us out in the past few years. We took some QuickBooks classes early on. My wife did. We took some at a local community college, and it was really helpful when we set the business up. And we've gotten better at it over the years. Okay. The better your books are, the more likely you are to make money.
Okay, I'm going to try to get him an interview with him, and we'll see. I really, and just today, actually, people have been talking about like webinars for QuickBooks, and I feel like Jerry could put some simple stuff together and post it in the community online or something.
He came in and we thought, we know what we're doing. We don't need to pay you. No, we did.
Oh, he did the same thing to me too.
Yeah, he comes in and says, well, you're not allocating your hours for service versus your front office guys differently. Why aren't you doing that? I'm like, I didn't know I should. So he taught us a lot of things that, we were throwing money away. We were missing expenses that we could write off legally and justifiably. So yeah, by all means, you're going to have to get somebody to teach you how to do accounting. Doing QuickBooks, because it's the most common software out there, is the only thing that makes sense to me. And finding a QuickBooks guru in your area or that can log in remotely and do some help for you is paramount.
And what's something you do differently that makes you more successful than others that maybe other people have not thought of? Like, is there something that's unique to your business?
Yeah, in our business, there's not a lot of camera plate makers in the world. It's kind of a very much a niche product, but it's all about the engineering, the materials, the testing. We brutalize our products before they ever see a customer. Our tester cars that we work with are either our own or local guys that are very willing to work with us, and we beat the crap out of our stuff, test it to death, and we don't skimp on anything on the materials, the bearings, the coatings, the platings. You just can't. So we make our stuff. The engineering factor is huge in our stuff, and other people's aren't. And we see our competitors' parts just fall apart, and it's just baffling that they haven't figured out how to do it differently. But that's what we do. We just over-engineer everything.
Okay. We talked a lot about how Terry here has run his business here, and so we talk a lot about the stuff in the EFI University class, and here's some information on that. EFI University is hosting a new class called Essentials of Operating a Shop. If you're interested in learning how to run your shop more efficiently, this class is for you. For details and to find a class near you, go to EFI101.com and look for the Essentials of Operating a Shop class. Our next class is being held in Houston, Texas on August 13th, followed by Chicago, Illinois on September 3rd. Be sure to use the coupon code DIFAL for $50 off when you sign up. So last section here, Terry, what's something you struggle with in business and how do you deal with it?
Cash flow is always king, and making sure you don't have too much inventory on the shelves or have enough material for the CNC machines. You can never have, too much on the shelf or too, but yeah, making sure you have enough manpower, not too much, not too little. Hiring people is really tough. firing people is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. It's gut-wrenching. I hate it. And the HR part of this business is really tough because people that come to work for you become your family, and it's really hard for me to just go, just screw them. Let's just let them. I can't. That's the hardest thing for me is to let somebody go.
Okay. Do you have a 1-year plan for your business for this, I guess, rest of this year and early next year?
I do, and it's pretty aggressive. After leasing in the last 2 shops we're in, we want to buy our own building. And it's pretty crazy. It's going to basically be a life-changing event, and it's a huge gamble. And it'll either work and be brilliant and save me a ton of money, or I'm going to be living in a van down by the river.
Or you can convert your awesome office into a house.
Exactly. Exactly. No, that's our big plan is to finally own the business property and get that costs under control.
Okay. And what about a 5-year plan for yourself?
5 years from now, man, it's hard to think that far out. Technology is changing so fast. It seems like it's accelerating. It's hard to say. Electric cars are something I'm definitely looking at. I worked in the power industry for a while, and seeing how, we're definitely a fossil fuel using industry, and that's got to be changing slightly in the future, and I don't know how that's going to work. So that's my big thing is, where do we go here from next? Are they going to keep making McPherson strut cars forever? I don't know. If they finally figure out there's better ways to do it, I'm going to have to figure out something different to really be our main product focus.
Okay. And so we like to take action and do it for a living. Can you suggest an action item for our listeners to take home and apply to their businesses or their work?
My biggest advice is to go back to your shop and clean it up, get it organized, make it well lit, make it enjoyable for your employees to work, and they will be more efficient and happier in their jobs. If they're sweating, if they're dying, if they're thirsty, if they're working in the dark, if they're working off the floor, they're going to be miserable.
Okay, so quick answer questions. Just pop whatever comes or say whatever comes to your mind here. So tell us a game-changing product you've seen in the last year.
Social media. You got to be smart on social media. You don't want to spend too much time or too much money on it, but you can't ignore it. You have to be out there. It is the latest place where people go for information.
Right. And to me, it seems like it's taken over forums entirely, but you deal with a lot more forums than I do. So
it's frustrating because the attention span on social media is so much shorter. You can't go back and search for more than a day or two. It's gone. That thread's gone. So we lose a lot of information. We reiterate the same answers over and over and over. And I hope that we have a renaissance where we go back to forums because it's a longer term database for really good answers.
Which is why having your blog's feedback to your blog is important because you still own and control the content. Yeah,
and that's something else too is, paying to be on somebody else's forum, especially when it's owned by one certain company.
Internet brands.
Unnamed. They kind of ruin everything they touch, and I won't do business with them. But other than that, forums are, some of my threads go back into the 90s, into the early 2000s. I've been on some forums for 15 years. And sometimes the answers really haven't changed. And if people will actually search for things, forums are a great place to find pictures and videos and help for all sorts of questions.
And what software are you using daily?
Obviously, QuickBooks we use every day. SolidWorks for CAD, Gibbs Cam for CAM. Couldn't imagine life without those 3 software packages.
What's your favorite app that you use daily?
Man, I hate
Pokemon Go, right?
Yeah, no, I'm not a Pokemon Go guy. I'm an adult. Sorry. No, I use Waze. It's just a navigation app. I don't drive anywhere without it, and it's saved me a lot of time and hassle.
Okay. What's your favorite shop tool?
Oh man, CNC machines. Those are my babies. Those are the money makers. They're going to become an ATM machine someday.
When you start doing work for oil companies, right?
Exactly. Probably have to take something outside of motorsports to really make money.
So what kind of car do you drive right now?
Oh man,
Truck Norris today, right?
Yeah, I drove Truck Norris today. I've got an old shop truck that we've done a lot of work to. I've got an F-350 diesel that I tow with. That's awesome. I love it. The twin scroll turbo. It's awesome. But I don't let myself drive that every day. As far as race cars, man, all my race cars are for sale right now. I haven't figured out what I want to drive next year, but we're trying to do some pretty radical stuff that I have cars I can't talk about because I overshare too much as it is, and my employees and wife are like, you got to shut up.
Okay.
So I can't talk about those.
Okay.
Sorry.
So the C5 Vet is your current track car. That's what you've been running at NASA, right? Or C4 Vet. C4
yeah,
Vet.
It's a 92 Corvette, Project Danger Zone, which is at the painter, and it should be done any day when it comes back.
You're painting it. It was white, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's white, but we're painting the cage and inside.
Okay.
We're really making it nice, and it's probably going to go for sale in a handful of weeks.
Okay. So for anybody who's interested, this will be the most expensive C4 Vet ever built. And it will go for pennies on the dollar.
It really will. Every time you sell a race car, you're lucky to get half of what you have in it or a third. But this one's really nice. We've done every system has been gone through. It's brand new. Someone's going to get a great deal.
Okay. So we can close this thing out here. So what do you think the future of automotive performance is going to be?
Man, I wish I knew. I wish I had that crystal ball. Having been in it since, the 80s really, and seeing how we went from carburetors to EFI to direct injection to,
Electric.
And yeah, it's hard to predict that. It really does seem like that technology is advancing at a pretty rapid rate. It seems to be we're going to everything has a turbo on it anymore or supercharger, and I'm not a huge fan of that for road course abuse. That doesn't tend to work as well in the heat. So that has me a bit worried. But no, I still think there's, I still love big displacement engines and the LS motor especially is awesome. And I've seen those just get bigger and badder and stronger. And I think my future, I hope, has a big giant LS motor in it.
Okay, except the new one that's supercharged. We talked about that at lunch extensively.
Don't buy a supercharged factory vehicle.
At least not for road course, right?
No, they're not. They're great street cars and dyno queens.
Okay, and how do we connect with you and your company?
Facebook, Vorshlag.
And it's spelled Vorshlag. I spell it wrong like 6 times every time I write
because
you.
We spelled it wrong from the German word. We have a pretty active YouTube channel, our blog. We have our own forum. We're on a lot of other forums. Me and Jason and my sales manager, John, we're on forums all day. So you can look for us on pretty much any motorsports forum.
Okay, cool. Terry, I wanted to thank you for coming over here. I know our hour-and-a-half interview went to like about 4 hours at least, I think. But
all good.
All right, cool. Thanks, Terry.
Thanks for listening to Do It for a Living. You can find out more about this guest, this show, and even details about what we just talked about at our website, doitforaliving.net. Check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/doitforaliving and tell us who you want to hear from. And most importantly,